Hey everyone, it's Chris at Scrapbook Tree. Today we're going to be making our 49 and Market flip album called Hike More. It's such a beautiful album and I'm really excited to take you guys along on this journey. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about all of the product that we're going to be using to create this album. First thing we need is the Foundations 2-inch landscape album, the Foundations jagged flip folio. We need small craft magnets from Tonic Studio, Hike More 6x8 collection pack from 49 and Market. When it's time to embellish, we're going to be using Vintage Artistry Hike More ephemera bits, wishing bubbles and trinkets, rub-on transfers, and Hike More washi tape. To assemble this album, we also need tools. We need a paper trimmer and we need some adhesive. I am using a 1/2-inch double-sided adhesive to help me assemble the base of the album. You want to make sure that you have some really strong tape. I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, liquid glue, some Tombow tape runner. I need a pencil, scissors, and some 3D foam squares. We're using Vintage Photo Distress ink, a finger dauber to apply that ink, and some sunburst stickles. Once you have all of your items ready, we can begin. So let's take a quick look at the contents of our collection pack of paper so we can kind of familiarize ourselves with what we're going to be doing. The cover page to our collection pack, if you flip it over, you're going to find a sheet of paper. And we're going to be using this on one of our very first projects. So we're going to set that to the side. And then you'll see the back side of the collection pack is also beautiful on the other side. We're going to set that over. And on the inside, you're going to find 8 different sets of 4 sheets of paper. You can take a quick look at them. I really love that blue. It's gorgeous. And you'll notice that a lot of them, they kind of have a little bit of a frame here. And that's really neat because that shows you where you can put a beautiful picture. You can kind of see a little bit of a framed out area. And then our collection pack also contains our die cuts. It has 2 sheets of each of these die cuts. And to begin our prep work, we're going to pop them all out and get them inked up. So let's go ahead and start doing that. 49 and Market does a great job of getting their laser cuts so they pop out fairly easily. We're just going to keep popping these out. And you may notice that there are some little connecting pieces from the inside of the paper. We just take our scissors and we kind of cut those off real quickly, make it nice and smooth, and we just keep going. And that's what we're going to do for all 4 pages of these laser cuts. We're going to pop them out, trim them up, make them pretty, and then we're going to ink them up. So our next bit of prep work will be inking our Hike More ephemera bits. It's always a good idea to get all your prep work done before you begin building your album. That way you're just ready to go. You know everything you've got. And you can kind of get an idea on how you want to use it. Do you have to ink every piece? Well, if you're going to use it, yes. If you know for sure you're never going to use that piece, yeah, save yourself some time, don't ink it. Now that we have all of our ephemera and embellishments all cut out and inked up and ready to go, what I like to do is kind of spread them out and keep them organized, because you'll see, there's doubles of a lot of them. So I keep them in groups, and so it's much easier for me to see all of the beautiful items that we have available to us when it comes time to embellish our album. What I'm using here are 2 lids from IKEA boxes that I have. You could use a cookie sheet. You can use envelopes if you prefer that method, but I really, really enjoy having them all spread out, and it's easy to just grab a tray and bring it over when I'm ready to embellish. Another thing that we can do to kind of get our prep work out of the way so we can begin to build our album is to trim up some paper for some photo matting that we'll be using as we construct our album later. The first thing we're going to grab is this Not All Who Wander Are Lost paper. It's got the green stripe on the other side. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this section of the paper out, and we're going to use this on our cover. So we're going to go ahead and trim this out. It's 8 inches long, so we're going to take it to the 4-inch mark on our paper trimmer. And we are going to trim it off. And now that we've got that, we're going to set it over here to the side so we can ink that later. And this will be used as a photo mat. The next sheet of paper that we're going to cut will be this one. It's brown, and it's got this green on the other side. We'll be using this side as a photo mat. So we're going to go ahead and take it and cut it at the 4-inch mark. So we're going to cut it in half and then in half again. And then we're going to take it at the 3-inch mark because it's 6 inches wide. And we'll set that over to our ink pile. And do the same over here. Put it at our 3-inch mark. The next sheet of paper we'll be grabbing is our green paper. You'll see what it has on the flip side. And again, placing it at the 4-inch mark to cut it in half. And then we're cutting it in half again at the 3-inch mark. And we'll do the same with our leftover piece. Put it at the 3-inch mark to cut it in half. And add that to the ink pile. Our last set of photo mats will be this beautiful blue. We're placing it at 4 inches. And then in half again at 3. So what we've got is a 3x4 square that we'll be using to mat our beautiful little photos that we're adding to our album later. I'm going to go ahead and put that one in half as well, so we can use this to mat photos later too. And so we'll be able to get these inked up and ready for use later. Just a little bit of prep work to make things go quicker. Now that we have all of our ephemera and die cuts inked up and ready to go, the next thing I'd like to do is take a quick look at our flip folio and kind of get familiar with that. I'm going to open it up, and you'll see it's got these great flips that we're going to be filling with lots of beautiful paper and eventually some beautiful photos. It's got 3 add-on pages, and it's got 4 spine hinges of different sizes. And these we're going to utilize when it comes time to build our pocket, and then when it comes time to insert the folio on pages. So now that we've got a little bit of an idea on what we're going to be using this for, we're going to go ahead and get started with our album. We're going to work on the outside cover of our album first. We need to grab our album, a paper trimmer, scissors, pencil, and washi tape. I'm going to go ahead and take our album and set it to the side. We'll be using that in just a minute. And I'm going to grab the washi tape. For this part of our album, we'll be using the map section. So I took that out of the package, and we'll put this with the rest of our embellishments for later. We need to take our washi tape and cut 7 inches off. You can see that there are map markings up at the top and along the side and bottom. We're going to take the top section and we're going to turn it over and place that on the 7-inch mark. And then we're going to go ahead and take our trimmer and trim it off. So what we're left with is a 6x7 piece of washi tape. I like to go ahead and ink the 2 edges of the washi tape. I leave the top and the bottom uninked because those will fold over into our album later and you won't even see them. I'm going to go ahead and ink these up and we'll be right back. Now that we have the edges of our washi tape inked up, our next step is to find the center. So when we place it on the back of our album and it folds over the edges, it'll have an even amount of washi on each side. So I'm going to use my cutting board, but you could use a regular ruler if you'd like. It's 6 inches wide, so I'm going to place the edge on the 6-inch mark, and then I am going to put a light pencil mark at the 3-inch mark, and we've got the center of our washi. Our next step will be to remove the packaging for our album and place the washi on the binding end of it. So let's go ahead and get started. I've gone ahead and unwrapped our album, and I've expanded the camera so you can see a little bit more of my desk area. I've done this because when we go to place the washi on the binding end of our album, we need to have our album standing upright on our desk like that. And it'll be much easier for you guys to see if I have the camera pulled back. So let's talk about our washi for a second. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to peel back about 2 inches of the backing from the washi. The reason we are not taking the entire backing off at one time is because the washi tends to curl and stick to itself. And if we take the entire back off, it will be impossible to work with. It'll just be sticking on everything. So I peel about 2 inches back and I cut the backing off to get it out of my way. Doesn't have to be a pretty cut. You just want to get it done. Cut your washi. That'll be bad news. All right, and you can see how it's curling already. I'm going to go ahead and set this to the side and talk to you about this next step because it's really, really important. When we take our album, before we place the washi on the end, we want to make sure we have our album facing the proper way. Since it's all white, it's super easy to get turned around. And if we put the washi on upside down, it makes for a really bad day. Do not ask me how I know. So when we open up the album, our first page should flip outward like that. If you have it upside down, turn it now. So then we take our album and we just go ahead and put it right side up like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and stand up so we can see what I'm doing just a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to grab our washi and we are going to center it over the back of the album. You can see our pencil mark, which marks the center of the washi. We'll want to have that right in the middle of the album. We will want to have a 1/4 inch hangover at the top, which will leave us with a 1/4 inch hangover at the bottom. And that's so we can fold over and finish the edges on the album. This line that runs over top of the numbers puts us at about a 1/4 inch, so that makes it super handy to get it both level and enough hangover at the top. Now, if your washi happens to stick where it shouldn't, it's fine. You can pull it right back up. Sorry, I feel a lot of pressure here. Okay. Now we do not want to fold our sides over yet. And the reason that we're putting it on where our album is like this instead of laying our album flat is because if we lay it flat, we'll never get it to close again. The washi will create too much resistance. So I'm going to turn our album to the side and we're going to flip it up, being careful not to push down the sides. That'll make it impossible for us to pull the rest of our backing off. So we can grab the backing and start peeling it off a little bit. We want to make sure that it's coming off evenly on both sides. Here we go. I got a good start. So what I like to do is I like to grab it here with these fingers and take my pinky on this end of my album and use my pinky to kind of push the album through toward the left. And while I'm doing that, with this hand, I'm taking my finger and I'm kind of smoothing it down as I pull so we don't get any wrinkles. Now, wrinkles won't totally ruin your album, but it certainly is a much cleaner look without them. So I'm pulling and pushing with my pinky and smoothing with this hand. Just taking my time. I want to make sure we do it nice. I'm sorry about the noise. I know it's really loud on the video. Okay, there we go. Now remember, don't fold over your edges quite yet. I'm going to make sure you have it smooth and no wrinkles because that'll give you an opportunity to lift it back up if you need to. So I'm going to grab my album and kind of turn it like that so we can see and I have a better angle to do it. And then just kind of slowly smooth down from the edge so we don't get wrinkles. I know a wrinkle is like the key word right now. Now don't fold over your edges on the end yet. So I have a handy dandy little trick for that as well. There we go. Looking good. Now what I like to do before I fold the ends in is grab my scissors and just nip right at each corner. It kind of helps you fold it over on the end without getting those weird kind of wrinkles. Okay, now it doesn't matter which end or which part we start folding over first, but we're just going to fold over our washi toward the inside of our album. There we go. Move our pages out of the way if we need to. Now you may notice that it doesn't always meet properly, maybe. You just use your nails and kind of push it down where you can. Still looks great. All right, there we go. We have got beautiful binding. So we've got the washi on our binding end. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our first page. We're going to fold it out and we're going to cut 2 inches off of this end. So I have my paper trimmer. I'm going to slide my page right under there to the 2-inch mark. Make sure it's level. And then we're going to cut 2 inches off of there. I'm going to move my cutting board out over to the side because we're going to use it again in just 1 minute. And then what we want to do with this page is we want to fold it so it's facing the other direction. This is creating kind of a large gatefold. We're going to leave these 2 pages blank for a little bit, and we're going to work on covering this page next. To cover our first page, we're going to use our cover page. We're going to flip it over, and you'll see this beautiful brown piece of paper. It's got some really cute butterflies, dragonflies, bird, and a really neat little fox there in the corner. Our issue is we only need a 6x6 piece of this paper. So which end do we cut off? If we cut off the top of it, you kind of get an awkward cut. You'll be cutting like halfway through this butterfly. You'll be seeing a tail of a dragonfly sticking out, and it just looks kind of weird. So Janine at 49 and Market recommended cutting the fox off. It's sad to see him go, but I think you'll be much happier with the end look. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set that at the 2-inch mark, and we are going to say goodbye to the sweet little fox. So now we have a 6x6 sheet of paper, and we are going to ink the edges of this one. And we're going to go ahead and grab our next sheet of paper, which is the full-size newspaper print. And we're going to go ahead and ink that as well, because we don't need to cut this before we adhere it into our album. So we've got our 2 pages inked. I'm going to go ahead and grab our 6x6 square of brown paper and my Tombow adhesive. And I am going to go ahead and run some adhesive on the back side of this paper. We want to make sure that we get close to the edge so we don't have any issues with it peeling up. This is a flip album, so it's going to get quite a bit of use, so you don't want to be stingy with your adhesive. You want to make sure it lasts. Okay, so we've got the adhesive on our paper. We're going to grab our album and flip open to our first page that needs covering, which is this little 6x6 square that we've cut. I'm going to center that paper, making sure that we're not too close to the crease, because we want to ensure that the book is able to flip freely. Pop that down. I also want to make sure that everything is facing the right direction. All right, page 1 covered. So our next step is going to be to cover up this middle page. We're going to use the newspaper print paper that we inked up earlier, and I like to have it laid so I can read this upper corner. I just think it looks better that way. But first we need to place a magnet underneath of that paper. So we're going to grab the magnets that came in our kit, and we're going to grab the glue dots that came with it as well, and we're going to pop out 2 magnets. Now, magnets, they have poles, and if they're not facing the right direction, they repel. So we need to find the opposite, and opposites attract. So we need to find the opposite pole by kind of putting them together and let them grab each other and pull together and become one. And then we're going to take our glue dot. And I'm going to place it on the back of a magnet. Okay, and the glue comes right off on that. And then we're going to place it about 1 inch in on our paper and centered up and down. So we're going to come in about 1 inch and pop our magnet down. Doesn't have to be completely, absolutely perfect, but we want it right about there. And then we're going to press it down. And then we're going to take off the top magnet and set it to the side for now. Now, in order to keep the magnet to have enough pull, we don't want to cover it with adhesive. The adhesive will make it a little more difficult for it to stick to the other magnet. So when we adhere our paper, we want to go along the edges like we've been doing, so we don't have any peel up issues. And then I kind of like to go on the actual paper itself, right around that magnet. And then I want to make sure that I've got it facing the right direction, flip it over, and then apply my adhesive around that area where it's not going to actually touch the magnet. And then we're going to center our paper over top. We want to make sure that we don't cover up this crease. Give it about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And adhere it to the bottom. So now that we've got that done, our next step will be to grab these two banner die cuts. One's a dark green and one is a light green. So while you're getting that, I'm going to get set up for the next part. Now that we found our dark green and light green banner, we'll need a magnet and some adhesive, and we will complete our magnetic closure. First, we need to take our dark green flag and our magnet and let it find its pole with the other magnet. Then we need to center our flag, making sure it's where we want it to be. And then we're going to grab our pop dots that came in our kit, and we're going to peel it off and place it on top of our magnet, pressing down tightly. We want to make sure we have a good seal, so we want to get all that adhesive on there. Then we're going to take our light green flag and take a peek at it and kind of see how it will set over top of our green flag. Don't adhere it down quite yet. Just kind of eyeball it and see where you want it. We're going to grab some liquid adhesive and place it on the dark green flag. I prefer to use the liquid for this because it makes a really good seal around the magnet. Don't go all the way to the end because our flag is going to have a little bit exposed. Now place that light green flag over top of the dark one. Just line it up, leaving just a smidge there on the end exposed. Makes it look pretty. Press down well. You want to make sure that you create a nice seal around the magnet so nobody can see it. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to find our magnet underneath the paper by placing it down until it connects. And then we are going to make sure that we don't put adhesive past the edge of our paper because we don't want it to stick down with anything but the magnet. So we're going to go about halfway with our adhesive. Want to make sure you adhere it well because this is a moving part and it does hold our page down. Find your magnet again before you place the other end down, and then level it out. And press down well. And there we go. So now we've created our first magnetic closure, and eventually we're going to be covering that up with some embellishments and a photo. Our next step will be to grab 3 sheets of newspaper, our last 3 sheets, and ink up the edges and place them on the empty pages in our album. Now that we have all of our papers inked up, we're going to go ahead and adhere them into our album. I'm going to run my tape along the edges. Now that we've got our adhesive on there, we're going to place it in our album. Since it is going side by side with the other newspaper print, we want to open it up, and we don't want it to look like the same sheet of paper, so we're going to give it a twist and place it in the album. lining it up, making sure we don't cover a crease. We want to make sure that it's lined up across the way so it doesn't look, well, I don't know, wonky when we open up the album. We want to make sure that everything's even. So now we're going to cover our last 2 pages of the spread. We're going to take the newspaper print paper and put adhesive on the back. Make sure you get close to your edges so we don't have any peel ups. And then we're going to open this and take a look, because once again, when it's spread out, we don't want our paper to look like it's the same sheet of paper. So we're going to give it a little twist, add some visual interest, place it in the album, lining it up across the top, and centering it between the creases. And our last sheet of paper, let's get that adhesive on. And one more twist. Lining it up carefully across the top and centering it between the creases. We'll adhere that puppy down. And it looks great. Now we're ready to begin to make the pocket for our album. To make the pocket, we're going to use this paper. It's got the green on the back. And what we need to do is score 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and take my paper trimmer and pop my scoring blade in there. I'm going to find the 1 inch mark. And we're going to score. I'm going to turn my paper around and score another inch. Okay, so we've got these 2 edges scored. We're going to fold them back. And then we're going to go to our next step. We're going to pop our scoring blade out. And I'm going to take one of the long spine hinges from my folio pack, and I'm going to trim an end off so it will fit over here. I'm going to trim it to 5 7/8. Oops. So I'm going to go over here and get it 5 7/8. Sorry. Make sure it's level and trim that off. Now we can take our cutting board and set that over to the side. I'm going to grab my album. We're going to open it up. And our pocket is going to go on this page. We're going to want to turn it so we can read the words. And it will go right here. We're going to take this, and this will form the back closure. So when we place items in, they don't fall out. So I'm going to take my hinge, fold it over, and then we are going to adhere it onto the inside of our paper. So I'm going to take my adhesive, and get it good and sticky. And I'm going to put it in there just so it's kind of back a little bit, because you don't want to really see that peeking out from the edge of your paper. And then what I'm going to do in order to get that to close is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to trim it Just going to take those two little bits right off. Okay. There we go. And then we're going to adhere it into our album. But first, we're going to ink the edges. So I'm going to grab my ink and meet you back here. Okay, we've got our pocket all inked up. And as I was inking, I was thinking, and we're going to want to trim these two edges off at an angle as well. It just kind of helps the paper to not peek out when you have everything closed, and it's just kind of a little bit of a nicer finish. So we've got those trimmed off, and we're going to go ahead and adhere it into our album. Now, because this pocket will probably get a fair amount of use, I'm going to use my double-sided tape to adhere it into the album, because I feel it's just a little bit stronger than the tape runner tape. It might just be me, I don't know. Run our tape that way. Sometimes I'm a little overzealous with my tape. I'm going to trim off that edge. There you go. Okay. When we adhere it, we're going to want to have this hinge over top, so when you slide things in, they don't get caught up on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull off my sides. And get that over top. We're going to pull off our last one. I'm going to go ahead and get our pocket centered over top. Press it down, and there we go. We've got our first pocket. Now that we've got our pocket done, we're going to move on to the next step of our album. We're going to turn the page, and here you'll see a nice 3-page spread. So we're going to grab some paper. We're going to use 2 sheets of this with lime green on the back. One will go over here, and one will go over here. And then we're going to use 1 sheet of the green, and that will go right in the middle. We're going to ink up the edges of our paper, and then we are going to adhere them into our album. So now that we have our edges inked up, we're going to go ahead and put some adhesive on the back of our papers. We want to make sure that we can read our print up here, that it's facing right side up. And then we're going to center our paper, making sure that we don't cover up the crease here where the album has to bend. I'm going to do the green next because it makes it easier to line the paper up across the top. You can kind of pick and choose which direction you want your green to be. I kind of think I like this over on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and center it in my album in between these two creases, and then make sure that it is level across the top so we don't have a wonky looking album. When we open it up, we want everything to look level across the top. I'm going to go ahead and throw some tape on the back of our last sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I can read it again and that it is centered and level across the top. All right, there we go. We've got that beautiful full spread. It's going to make a really great canvas for some beautiful embellishments. The next thing I'd like to do is take paper and ink that up and cover our last two pages here. We're going to use this paper. So let's go ahead and ink it up and place it in our album. Okay, so I've got our last two sheets of paper inked up, and I'm going to go ahead and place them in the album. Since it'll be spread out and you'll be able to see both sheets at the same time, I kind of like to give it a little switch up, make it a little visually interesting. And I'm going to place this over there and that over there. Get our adhesive on the edges. I'm going to place that on the back cover. You'll see that you've got the crease there, so you don't want to cover it. We're going to center it out. All right. Get my adhesive. And then we're going to take it and center it on our last page. We want to make sure that we are not covering our creases and we're trying to keep it as level as we can at the top. It presents a really nice visual impact. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to work on this page and we are going to build a gatefold. So to create our gatefold, we're going to need to take two of the singular sheets out of our folio. We're going to need 3 sheets of the green stripe paper and 1 sheet of the green, scissors, adhesive, and a pencil. I'm going to pick one of our folios, set the other one to the side, and I am going to grab one of my green stripe sheets of paper. Now, I really like the distressed part of it, so I'm going to make sure that that is featured on my first page of my gatefold. So what we need to do is we need to take our sheet of paper and push it out so it is about 1/4 of an inch from the crease of our folio page. We want to make sure that it is centered top to bottom. And the reason that we're doing it 1/4 of an inch from the crease is because after we cut the edge off and we push it back, it'll leave about 1/8 of an inch on both sides. So now that we've got it centered, we're going to hold it tight and flip it over and place it on our desk, grab a pencil and trace our folio. You want to be able to see your mark. Here we go. And then we're going to go ahead and cut out along our line. It doesn't need to be a perfect cut. You're going to notice that there's lots of little bumps from the folio edge. And as long as you kind of get a little close, it's gonna look like you're right on the money once you have your paper on there. That little 1/8 of an inch edge gives you a little bit of leeway. It doesn't have to be a perfect match. There we go. And take that and push that over to the side. And you'll see that when we put it on our folio edge, we've got about an equal in between the front and the back. And before we adhere that down, we're going to want to ink it up. But before we adhere it and ink it, we're going to do the back side of the page. So I'm going to set this green paper over to the side. I'm going to flip my folio over, and I'm going to take another green sheet of paper. And this one I'm going to set on this end. And again, we're going to push it out about 1/4 of an inch and make sure that it's centered top to bottom. And then we are going to hold it tight and flip it over. And we are going to follow the edge of the folio with our pencil. And we're going to trim it out again. There we go. Now set that over to the side. And then we can kind of see what we've got happening here. Looking pretty good. And that one will go on this side. There we are. So let's go ahead and ink up both of these sheets of paper, and then we will get them adhered onto our folio page. Okay, so we've got both of our pages inked up, and we're going to go ahead and adhere them onto the back of our folio. You want to make sure that you get your tape close to the edge. And then we're going to center it. And adhere it down. Then we'll flip it over, and we're going to do the same to this page. Center our and there we go. We have our first gatefold done. I'm going to go ahead and fold that back. The next thing we're going to do is trim this at an angle, just like we did for our pocket. And it just kind of helps hide it under the paper that we're going to put over top of it. Put that over to the side, and now we're going to work on our other gatefold. Since this one, we'll want to have our edges going toward one another, and I am going to flip it upward like that because I don't like that it meets that way. I want it to kind of go over top of one another. So So I'm going to make sure that this stays on the top. And our top is going to be covered with our green paper. You can pick and choose what side you want to have featured on your folio. I really like this. It's got a lot of visual interest on it. So I want to keep this as my page. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it and use it this way. And again, we're going to come up about 1/4 inch from that crease and keeping our paper centered from top to bottom. I'm going to hold it and flip it over and do the edge. Go ahead and trim off the part that we aren't using. And again, you don't have to follow every single little lump and bump, just kind of a general trim down the side. I've lost my edge. How's that? There we go. Okay. So you see we've kind of got it going that way. I'm going to look over here real quick. There we go. That'll make me happier. I kind of wanted just a little bit more of a bump there. There we go. And then once again, we'll be inking that and then adhering it. But let's go and do the other side. To do the other side of this folio, we're going to grab our last sheet of green striped paper and we are going to place it again about 1/4 inch from the crease and centered top to bottom. And I'm going to flip it over. Trace our edge. And we are going to cut off the excess that we're not going to be using, following the line as closely as you can, but not perfectly. It doesn't matter that much. Push that over to the side. So now that we've got our front and back of this folio page done, we're going to go ahead and ink both of our pages and adhere them to the folio. We've got both of our pages inked up. Let's go ahead and adhere them to our folio. Again, we want to tape as close to the edge as possible so we can prevent any unwanted peel-ups. I'm going to center it between the crease and the edge and up and down. There we go. Flip that over and grab my other page and do the same. once again, centered, left to right, top to bottom. And there we go. And we'll also want to cut this side, 45-degree angle, which will help hide it when we adhere it into our album. We're going to grab our album and the last sheet of paper that we're going to be using to cover this page after we install our gatefold, and it is this. It's got the beautiful fern and cute little dragonfly in the corner. On the back side, it's got the trail map. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take our gatefolds and apply some adhesive. I am going to again use my double-sided tape. I'm going to get a little bit of length out there. And you want to make sure that when you apply tape, you don't cover up the crease of the album. You want it to be able to move freely. I'm going to add just a little bit more on this end. Go. I'm going to trim there. And we're going to want to install the left one first. So you'll want to see the edge of your paper and the edge of your gatefold. And we're going to place it right on that end. And then we're going to adhere it down. And it doesn't matter that there's a little bit of adhesive poking out there because we're going to cover that with our paper in just a minute. So then I'm going to take my other gatefold and I'm going to apply adhesive to the back of that. Again, careful not to cover my crease so it continues to move freely. I'm going to add just a little bit here on this corner, make me happy. And peel that back. Now that we've got our adhesive on there, we're going to place it on the edge of our album here. I like to lift my page up so I can see what I'm doing. I want to have it lined up right at the edge. I'm going to match it up top to bottom. And there we go. All right, so now we've got our gatefold finished, and we're going to take our paper and we're going to ink this up, and then we are going to adhere it onto the last page of our album. So I've got my page inked up. I'm going to grab my adhesive and follow the edges, just like we've been doing throughout the entire album so far. Then we're going to take our album, make sure it's right side up, and we are going to center it. We want to make sure that it's meeting across the top level, and we aren't covering up any of the folds, so our album will move freely. And then we're going to press it down. So we're going to work on our flip folio right now. And in order to complete this, we're going to need the following things. We'll need the folio, we'll need a short spine hinge, our pencil and scissors and adhesive, and the following papers. We'll need with the fern and the dragonfly, The other side has the trail map. We'll need this sheet of paper with the 2 twigs on the side and the lime green on the back. We'll need 2 sheets of the brown. It's got this on the back, but we're using that side. We'll need 2 sheets of this paper. It's got the journaling cards on the back side. And we will need 1 sheet of this paper. It's got the blue on the back. We'll be using that side. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to do the jagged edge technique for our front page. This will be on the front. So we're going to bring our paper up about 1/4 inch. Make sure it's centered on the folio and even. And then we are going to flip this over and trace the edge of our folio onto the back of that piece of paper. And then we will go ahead and take our scissors and trim the excess that we're not using off, following our pencil line as closely as possible, but again, not perfectly. If we can't, no big deal. And just keep cutting down the line. This is such a fun project. All right, go ahead and throw that piece away. We don't need that anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and ink this before we adhere it. But let's finish the back side of it before we do that, and then we can go ahead and ink that as well. For the back side, we're going to be using this brown sheet of paper. I kind of like this vine, because there's several of the like vine twig thingies on the bottom here, and I really like how that looks. So we're going to save that piece so it's visible. And we're going to push our paper up about 1/4 inch from the crease. Make sure it's centered and turn it over. And then we are going to trace the folio edge again. All right. I'm going to go ahead and trim this piece off. I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, but this part of the project, it really gives you a lot of leeway. Just that space, that 1/8 of an inch space on the edge really makes the world of difference. It makes it not quite so obvious if you aren't a perfect trimmer, and I most definitely am not. My scissor skills need help. So we've got our backside cut out, and then we are going to go ahead and ink the front and back, and then we're going to adhere them to our folio. So let's go ahead and grab our ink, and I'll meet you back here. All right, so I've got my front and back of the first page of our flip folio inked. Now we're going to adhere them to the folio. And make sure you're getting close to the edge. And we're going to make sure that it is centered between the crease and the edge and side to side. All right. I'm going to open it and we're going to place the brown on the inside. Let's get the adhesive on that. And then once again, we want to make sure that we're not covering that crease so that the album can flip freely. We'll center it between the top and bottom, left and right. Making sure that our edge kind of follows right there. And there we go. Page 1 complete. Our next step is going to be to work on our 2 side flips. So we're going to start with this side, just because. And for that, we'll be covering it with this on the inside and this paper on the outside. Let me turn it so we can read it. Just like that. So let's go ahead and work with this one first. We're going to do the exact same concept as we've been doing. We're going to move it out about 1/4 inch from the crease, centered from top to bottom. I'm going to flip it over and trace the back side along my folio edge. And then we're going to go ahead and trim it. And we're going to set it over to the side into our ready to ink pile. Okay. So we've got the inside ready to go. We'll set that over here. Then we're going to go ahead and work on the inside of this one. And for that, we're going to use this other sheet of paper. Making sure that we're about 1/4 inch again and centered from left to right. We're going to take it and turn it over. Trace the edge of our folio onto our paper. And we're going to go ahead and trim away the side that we are not using. Go. And then you'll see that when we have it lined up, it'll look really nice in there. I think I'm going to take this and give it just a little bit more of a straight edge because it'll make me happier over here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to put this over into our ready to ink pile. And we're going to go ahead and work on the front of our album. For that, we are going to need 2 of these sheets of paper. I said 1 at first, but I forgot. So it's 2. And we are going to make sure that we can read it. And we're going to have it about 1/4 inch out again. Centered top to bottom. Flip it over. And we're going to go ahead and cut off our scrap. Okay, and before we do the other side, what I'd like to do is go ahead and ink these 3 sheets of paper and get them in our album. So let's go ahead and grab our ink and I will meet you back here. Okay, so we've got our 3 sheets of paper inked up and we're going to go ahead and adhere them to our album. We're going to run our tape along the edge as we've been doing. And then we are going to center it from top to bottom, left to right. There we go. And then we're going to open and put our other page in. And get it centered in there nicely. Try to see if we can keep it fairly even. There you go. And then we're going to place the paper on the inside of this one. All right. And making sure that we're not covering up our crease. Getting it fairly level. There we go. The next thing we're going to do is place paper there, there, and there. So we're going to go ahead and ink the last 6 sheets of paper. We're going to ink 2 of these, 2 of these, and 2 of the brown. So let's grab our vintage photo and I'll meet you back here. Okay, now that we have these inked, we're going to go ahead and pop those in our folio real quick. We'll open it all the way up and we are going to take this sheet, and you can pick and choose how you would like it to go in. I kind of like to have this little navigation part, little map symbol on the lower side. I feel like it kind of adds a little bit of visual weight down in that corner, and I just kind of like it there. So I am going to go ahead and grab my adhesive. We're going to go ahead and pop it in the middle. We're going to line it up all the way across. Make sure it's centered. There we go. And then on this bottom portion, let me flip that over and move my album up. We're going to do brown again. And because I have my vines at the bottom here, I'm going to put them at the top here. Once again, this is purely aesthetics. Doesn't really have any functional difference. It's what you like. And you should feel free to make modifications in the album if you want to. It's your album, right? So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we are not covering up that crease. And center it. Sorry, stuck. Make sure it's level and centered, and then adhere it down. And then on the back side, we are going to place this sheet of paper. Now, because on the top I've got my vine going down, I am going to place it on the top here. Again, this is just an aesthetic, a preference. I think that it looks kind of cool, like it's almost interconnected there. So when it flips, it'll be kind of neat to look at. So we're gonna go ahead and throw some adhesive on the back of this one. And we are going to center it. And we want to make sure that we've got it kind of lined up and even across the top again. We're going to adhere it. And then we are all set with this part. So let's work on our last page. We want to lay this one directly over top, like so, and line it up over here. And then what we're going to do is instead of pushing it a 1/4 inch, we're just going to push it like 1/8 of an inch right to the edge. And then we are going to carefully pick up this side, holding it tight so it doesn't shift. We're going to grab our pencil and go along the edge of our folio one last time. And cut away the part that we are not using. Go. And now you can see, while we have our paper on there, how the frame kind of meets. It looks like we've just split the paper, one sheet of paper, in half. So we're going to go ahead and ink this, and then we're going to adhere it into our folio. And then we'll get ready to put the folio into our album. All right, so we have our folio cover inked up. We're gonna go ahead and put adhesive on the back and attach it to the folio. I'm gonna line it up. We want to, we're going to ensure that our frame that we worked so hard on getting lined up is looking good. All right, and there we go. Our flip folio is complete. So let's go ahead and close our folio properly. That'll help us hang on to it later so our flaps aren't flopping. I'm gonna go ahead and close it up, and we are going to grab our album and open to the front page. Our folio will be attached to the left side of the album. So when we open our album, we will flip out a folio and have a 3-page spread. So the first thing we need to do is grab our short spine hinge and trim off each edge to 45 degrees. And we do this to kind of help hide that angle under the edge, because if it's two straight edges, it just looks a little funky. So this will be adhered first to our folio. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way, and I am going to grab my tape, my double-sided tape, and I'm going to place some. We don't want to cover up the actual crease, so I'm going to have it running just below the crease. And I'm going to trim off this excess. I'm going to pull that off, and then I'm going to add some more so it goes all the way to the edge here. And I'm going to trim that excess off. We want to make sure that it's holding strong because it will have a lot of action flipping back and forth. So we want to use really, really good adhesive. Pull that off. And then I'm going to go ahead and add one more strip here at the edge to make sure that we've got everything covered and it's adhered really well. Okay. All right, flip that back open. Take a look at what we've got. Now when we adhere it, we want to make sure that when it is flipped out, that it can lay flat. So I'm going to find my center here real quick and then line it up. You want corner to corner, just on this side of the crease. Holy moly. There we go. Oof. So much pressure. All right. And then we are going to do basically the same thing on the other side. We're going to lay our adhesive and then we're going to adhere it to the back of the album. So let's break out our double-sided tape again. Pull that layer off and grab another one. I want to get close to that crease, but I don't want to cover it because I want it to be able to move and flip back and forth. I'm going to trim this excess adhesive off. And we're going to flip our album back out. I'm going to make sure that the folio is facing the right direction. And then I'm going to peel off the double-sided tape and flip it over. And then we are going to grab our folio and our album. And we are going to line everything up nicely. And there we go. So now our album will be able to flip open and closed. Now before we cover the inside with paper, we need to add magnets. So I'm going to press here real quick, make sure that's down good, and then we are going to grab the last two magnets in our kit and the glue dots as well, and then we're going to get ready to place them. We're going to pop our magnets out of the plastic. And we're once again going to let them find their opposite polarity. And I'm going to take a glue dot and place the magnet on there so it pulls off and sticks nicely. And we're going to place this about an inch in on the cardboard cover of our album. So we're going to put it right about there. We don't want it too close to the edge because we need to have a place for our paper to adhere. So we're going to push that down. And then we are going to put our final glue dot on the top. And that's there. And then what we're going to do is flip our folio shut, press it down so that the magnet adheres to the back side, and open it up. And now our magnets are perfectly placed. So we're going to grab our last 3 sheets of paper and put them into the album. We're going to start with the middle one, and we're going to use this sheet of paper. And don't forget, we want to avoid putting adhesive on our magnet. So I'm going to go ahead and do my little adhesive magnet avoidance square. I'm going to go along the edge of our paper. We want to avoid adhesive in that area where the magnet will be. And we're going to center it. Oh, a little sticky. There we go. And for our next sheet, we're going to use this. I'm going to grab our adhesive. And I'm going to put this little bit in the corner, at the lower corner. And we're going to center it on our album page, making sure that we don't cover up the crease so it can flip freely. We also want to line it up over here. There we go. We got that down. And now we're going to move to our last page. We're going to use this sheet. And again, we don't want to cover our magnet with adhesive. And I think I will put this square up here since it's in the opposite corner on the other one. So I want to avoid that area with my adhesive. We're going to center it. There we go. And we're going to try to line it up best we can over here. There we go. We have completed the base of our album. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at our work. We've got our album. And then when you flip up, you've got our flip folio. Page 1, our magnetic closure and our pocket. Page 2 and 3. Look at that. Beautiful. So many photos are going to go in here. And there we go. We've got a gatefold right here. And this flips open. And then we've got our last page. Great job, everybody. Okay, I'm going to walk you through how we're going to place pictures on our gatefold in the middle of our flip folio. We're going to grab 2 3.5 by 5 cardstock. And one will be placed here, and the other will be placed here. And they will overlap and completely cover each other up. So when you look at it initially, you're going to think, oh, it's just one picture. And then you're going to flip it open and you're going to go, I have 2. It's great. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I think I kind of prefer to start on the outside because that's what I see first. Now we're going to put this cute little card on the back. So it's probably going to be right about there. So we're going to go ahead real quick and just throw some adhesive on this. Line it up inside of this frame. We want to make sure that we can still see the stitching. Here we go. And then I'm going to take some adhesive and adhere my card on the back. Just kind of adds a little decorative touch back here. So you just don't look at blank cardstock. You can also grab your ink and kind of touch up a little bit more on that side as well if you'd like. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to throw some adhesive on the back of this one. And then I'm going to put the non-sticky side right into that card. Make sure it's all lined up nicely. And we're going to go ahead and close our gatefold. And I am not even. Thank goodness for repositionable tape. Here we go. And press it down, and voila. To close our gatefold, I've kind of reinvented a little bit of what Janine did in her written instructions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 2.5 by 3 size piece of cardstock, and I'm going to attach my frame to that and trim around the exposed edges and leave a spot where we can slide our photo in. And then I am going to put pop dots on the back of that. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. want to kind of pop just a little bit away from the edge on the side that's closest to the flap. What we're going to do is when it's time to close the album, we're going to have it right underneath there. Just have it far enough where we can kind of bend it and slide it under there, and it's going to help keep our album flap latched. You don't have to pop dot it. You could just stack cardstock underneath of it. That's what Janine was doing, and I just kind of was like, well, I think I'm going to pop dot it. It gives me a little more space without quite as much cardstock. I don't have to guess how much I need. Put a couple in the middle for good measure. And then we're just going to find a spot where our album sticks out a little bit. And pop it right under there. So now you can open it and then just give it a little push underneath there, and it's latched. So then we can go ahead and finish embellishing these parts. So at the end of our album, we have the option of creating another flip folio. We have one last folio page left, and we have our last sheet of paper. We can use this paper to cover our folio, and then you'll have another fun flip at the end. You don't have to add this, but it's fun. So I'm going to show you how to make it. So we'll need our folio page, this sheet of paper, and then our last spine hinge that we've cut to an angle. So we're going to grab our paper trimmer and get to work. Okay, so we've got our folio sheet, which is 6 1/4 inches wide. And we've got our last sheet of paper. What I'm going to do is I am going to try to save more of this dragonfly. So I am going to cut it to 6 1/8 on this end. I'm going to put the butterfly over here by my 6. And I'm going to, again, trim my poor fox away. And then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to trim another 1/8. So I'm going to put it at the 6-inch mark. So now when we have our paper over top, we centered like there. So we are going to go ahead and we're going to do our jagged edge tracing. So we've got it 1/4 inch from the crease, and we're going to flip it over, grab our pencil, and trace again. And we're going to and trim away the excess. Again, we are following our pencil mark fairly close, but not perfectly. Okay. So when we adhere it, it'll be right about there. You see we've saved our dragonflies, but we've lost our fox and butterfly. We can add more embellishments to this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and ink this, and I'm also gonna ink this because it's gonna be sitting in the middle of our page and I think it'll look better. So let's go ahead and grab our ink and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I've gone ahead and inked my folio page and the paper, and you can see I've inked along the crease as well because we're gonna flip it over and everything is gonna be visible in the center of the page. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our tape. Let me see if I can find where I put it. I'm going to use double-sided just because it's easier to put it on there real quick. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and trim this to an angle because it will be covered up by an ephemera piece. There we go. And I am going to put some adhesive on this paper. And we're going to center it. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our album and flip to the last page. You can pick and choose where you would like to place this. You can put it on the inside. I'm going to put mine here. And I'm going to get it centered and pull my tape. I can't see the camera, I have to stand up. And there we go. So now that we have our flap installed, we can talk about what we're going to do underneath of it. You should have this large map ephemera piece, and we can place that right underneath there, and it's hidden by our flap, and it also hides our spine hinge. So we're going to go ahead and throw some adhesive on the back of that. And then center. You want to get as close to the crease as you can so it stays hidden underneath your flap. But you also want to make sure that you can still close your flap. Center it just a little bit more. Perfection, right? There we go. All right. The rest of this video will be without narration. It's just me embellishing my album. I wanted to post it so you guys can have an idea on what ephemera I used and where I used it, and to give you guys some ideas on what you might do with your own albums. I hope that you take the time and look through all of your ephemera and stickers, because there are so many that came with this album, and really pick and choose the ones that work best for you. Get creative. Please be sure to tag us on social media and show us your projects. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with your albums. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We have in-store classes that are available for this album to help you assemble the base. So you can sign up for those on scrapbooktree.net. Be sure to stop in the store and see us. We can't wait to see your smiling faces, and I really appreciate you guys coming along on this journey with me, and I hope that everything has been wonderful for you. Please let us know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys at the store soon. Thank you.
Ba ba da ba 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 ba. ba ba da ba ba da ba